Hi, Denise Dryden here from Whitefish, Montana, and it's Sunday morning, Easter morning here in the United States, and I thought I'd talk today about boundaries. Like, what's that thing about boundaries? Hi, Kelly. So glad you're joining me. I hope you had a good Easter egg hunt with your kiddos this morning. It's nice and quiet here. I'm in my own place, just enjoying this peaceful moment of and remembering all of the times on Easter's. Growing up with children in the house. It was amazing. So let's talk about boundaries, okay? So the thing is that boundaries are defined by us only. They're for us. They're only for us. They don't matter it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or believes. They have nothing to do with another person. Period. So this is when we're talking about boundaries in their purest form, there's self-awareness. There's self-compassion. This is where we say, this is who I am. This is how I define myself. This is how I operate in the world. I've got my little list because it's Sunday. I like that thumbs up coming across. It's what's meaningful to me. This is who I choose to be. This is my comfort zone. This is where I hang out and I know myself really well and I'm in my most comfortable place. This is my path and responsibility to communicate to others. It's my responsibility to say, this is who I am, this is what I need. And when you get too close to something that bothers me, when you get too controlling, when you get too, when your definition comes in and crashes on mine, it's my role to say, I need to step back. I need to move over here. I need to do something different because I'm uncomfortable. So it's how we represent ourselves to others. It's also our own journey to define and expand. This is how we determine who we are and who we're going to be in this world. And it's also ours to play with. Our boundaries are completely ours. And they change. Of course they change. They change with situations. They change with age. They change with wisdom. They change with as we become more self-aware and we become more Kelly, I needed to hear this today. I think that's why I always talk about what I need to hear from someone else or what I'm exploring. So this is how I play with what matters to me and how I represent myself. So when someone else tries to put boundaries on us, why do they do that? Well, I was thinking that, when we're children, our parents do the best thing they can, which is to impose themselves on us. This is me, this is what's important to me, this is what I want to share with you, and you have a child that gets to model what's important to the parents, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's important to the child. And as a parent, giving a child space and time to develop who they are and to understand who they are and to sort of explore and figure it out, that's the role of the parent. Not to impose what we are onto our children, but to give them a platform so that they can go explore themselves. When the definitions get blurry and we don't know what's mine and what's theirs, that's when we really need to go do some work on boundaries and find out, what is mine? Who am I? When there's unclarity, sometimes we come across as being ungrounded and scattered and easily swayed. And we're looking for a point of security and we're looking outside of ourselves to attach to someone who models that to us or something that we know that worked before. And that isn't necessarily the best way to go after boundaries. I have a different idea on that. So starting with this, the thing about boundaries is that they're ours to own completely. They don't belong to anybody else. And it's up to us to shape and control those, shape and define those the way that we want, okay? So if we were to look at boundaries as, I came up with a good example, and that is the lotus flower. The lotus flower floats on a pond, and it stays at the top surface on top of the petals, and it moves with the water, and it's responsive, and it's in the flow, and it's open, and it's vulnerable, and it shows the center to the world, right? So at its core, boundaries in the feminine form are open and receptive, and they're in balance. This is what happens when boundaries look really good. okay? Remembering that this is the feminine, if we bring the masculine, which is the root that comes down to the base of the pond or the lake or wherever the lotus flower is growing, that stem, that long root that goes into the ground provides sustenance. It provides security and it provides nourishment. So, when we are talking about boundaries, it is the perfect blend between the masculine and the feminine. So the masculine provides sustenance and the feminine blooms. So when we are accessing our boundaries, we have to remember that we're both masculine and feminine. If we're too masculine, it's like, those are my boundaries, stay away. Back, back, back. And when we are too feminine, we're wafting all over the place. So as we merge the masculine and the feminine, and we become this lotus flower, what we recognize is that we are in the balance, the most beautiful balance of masculine and feminine. Let's see what else. When we are confused, when we are triggered, when we are shaped by others, we've forgotten who we are. What do we do when that happens? We just sort of pull back, take a pause, and do what you need to do to reconnect to yourself and to that self-compassion, which is, wow, somehow I pulled up those roots from the bottom of that pond, and I've been just drifting all over the place, and I've been projecting what I believe needs to happen onto others instead of pulling it in and taking time to be responsive to myself. Does that make sense? So we become very masculine in our, if you had boundaries, then you wouldn't do this to me. And it's never about someone else having boundaries for you. It's about you representing yourself in a really clear manner, okay? So access who you are. Find out what grounds you. Get back to what you know about yourself. Get back to your own wisdom. That's the easiest way to reground. And I think, that's why we have so much out there in our culture on mindfulness and self-care and self-compassion, is that if we forget who we are, then we start reacting to everything in our environment around us. And when we're at work and we're in reaction, we're not effective. When we're a parent and we're in reaction, we're imposing that chaos onto our children. And I don't think that that's the way that we really want to be as parents. So parenting, modeling in relationship, in the work environment, in the world out there, has a completely different way of being when we come at it this way. When we come at it from looking at boundaries. So Martha Beck did this video. I think she just put it out there last week on Facebook. I think it's called The Pool and the Pyramid, or The Pyramid and the Pool. And she takes a bowl of water, and then she has a stack of sugar cubes, sort of looking at the top-down management, the power, the stressors in the world, the way that the world is controlled by those select few at the top. Anyway, it's a really interesting video, because what she starts with, hi Melody, I'm so glad you're here. What Martha Beck starts with is the concept that we are all a pool of water. And what I like is that when we know who we are, when we know very succinctly who we are and what our boundaries are, and we start to put those out, remember, as the lotus flower, expanded, vulnerable, open, what happens is we create these little ripples, like the way the water drops into a pool and then spreads out and resonates and goes out and out and out. And I think that that's the core piece of what we want to remember about boundaries. Boundaries are knowing who we are, how to represent ourselves, and then giving ourselves the opportunity to just be present and resonate and go out with that. And that means that anybody who comes into our world, they absolutely know we're authentic, we're real, we're very clear on who we are, we know what we will do and what we won't do, we know how to expand and bring joy to areas. And what happens is, if we each do that, then what we have is millions and millions of little pools of water expanding and resonating out there as to who we are. And we teach our children that the most important part is to know who we are and how to define ourselves, how to chase after what matters to us at the extent of letting go of what other people's agendas are for ourselves, and to become that unique individual person that we are, so that we can start to send that out into the world. And I think that that's the most key part about remembering our boundaries. So we invite others into clarity. Have you ever noticed that when you're just really centered and you're really completely yourself, those people who love that, those people who are that, those people who want that in their world, yeah, they step in and they look at you and they're like, I want to be with you. I want to hang out with you. And then there's that other part, which is when you're just sort of there resonating, being your complete, beautiful self in authenticity, and you go up on someone who's not, they get really triggered. You know, they start to do reaction. And I want to say that underneath that is that invitation, that little tap, tap, tap on the shoulder, which is, hey, who are you? And if you're lost, how do you get back to yourself? So I think that that's how we lead. We lead by boundaries. So the thing about boundaries is that it's our highest, purest form of leadership. It's our highest, purest form of self-compassion. And it is our greatest tool as parents, as leaders in the work world, as leaders in our community, is to lead by knowing ourselves and having the courage to put ourselves out there day after day, and to be able to define ourselves so that we can define what we want to see in the world. So this is the kind of stuff that I do in my coaching. Is sometimes, you know, when I come into coaching teenagers and parents in that conflict, and I start working with the parents on boundaries, they're like, oh yeah, I have some work to do. And it's like, yeah. So how can we explore that? How can we start to define, set up some situations where you can define who you are? So that's what I do as a coach. If you're interested, you can always find me on DeniseDrydenCoaching.com. Also here on my Facebook page. In these videos, there's several of them. You can always go in and check them out and see what you think. So have a great Sunday. Have a great week. And thank you for listening and watching. Take care. Bye-bye.